Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Morning Meeting. I am your host, Julio Briones. In today's world, many businesses will find themselves going through the courts or dealing with issues with their own loved ones where they may find themselves having to go and find an attorney. How do you do that? How do attorneys help us? How do they help us in our personal lives? How do they help us muddle through this business process? Today, we are joined by Bob BIANCHI and David BRUNO of the BIANCHI Law Group, former Morris County prosecutors, and they're here to guide us through the confusing world of the legal system. Welcome, Bob and David. How are you?
How you doing, Julio? Thanks for having us on.
All is well here. Thanks for having us, and for everyone watching this, hope everyone is healthy and safe.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure our viewers appreciate all of this. And just remember, anyone who's watching, if you're enjoying the episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our show. So, Bob, I'm going to start with you. One of the big questions that always seem to come up is, how do you hire an attorney? What is it that people need to be aware of if they want to go out and find legal counsel?
Well, finding an attorney is probably the most significant choice that a person is going to make in the context of all the various areas of the law. So we practice in criminal law and domestic violence, Julio. So, and I think this kind of applies mainly to even civil areas as well, because there are so many different areas. Like there's 90,000 lawyers. How do you pick the person? And when people come to us and they ask us this question, either they can't afford our services or there may be a conflict of interest. What I say to them is that one of the things that you can avail yourself to is what they call the New Jersey Supreme Court certification process. That is the only gold standard that's out there. And essentially what that process is that before you can even attempt to be certified by the New Jersey Supreme Court, you have to demonstrate a significant proficiency in the area of law in which you're being certified. You have to have tried a number of cases. You're vetted by judges and adversaries. You have to list out your cases, your motions. They want to know that you're really a person that was in there doing a lot of court time and that you're excellent at doing it. If you get that far, you then have to take an examination, which is much different than the bar exams. It's an additional credential. And if you pass that examination, you become a certified trial attorney. To give you an idea of how coveted that distinction is, in the criminal certification process, there are only approximately 250 attorneys in the entire state of New Jersey who are declared certified criminal trial attorneys by the New Jersey Supreme Court out of over 90,000 lawyers. So that is kind of like a way that you can immediately go to as a gold standard. There's civil certification and other certifications, family law certifications that you can look at. But there's also another very important thing too that we tell the criminal people, that the criminal clients that are calling in with respect to criminal cases. The websites are out there, Julio. They all make everybody look phenomenal. They make everybody look great. That's the intention of them. You got to do more digging and scratching than what's on the surface. And so what I would say to people is, this is my preference. I like former prosecutors. Our whole team, or a team of aggressive former prosecutors who fight the government's case when they bring charges against a client. I want former prosecutors because they've played on the other side. They understand how prosecutors think. They understand how they operate. And if you're a person who can prove a case to 12 jurors beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest legal standard there is, civil's a preponderance, which is lower, then you've got a pretty good and skilled trial lawyer. And that's what's important, having a good trial lawyer that's good on their feet, knows the evidence rules, knows how juries operate. And in our world, with regard to the prosecutors, we know how to dialogue with them because having been prosecutors, we know what's important to them and what is not. So one last point I say with that, there are lots of people. When I was the head county prosecutor, I had about 37 assistant prosecutors under my wing. One of them is on the show right now, David BRUNO, my law partner currently. Now, when I tried a murder case as a prosecutor, I could have picked any one out of 37 prosecutors to choose from. I chose Dave to be the person that was going to assist me because he was in the major crimes unit. He had homicide experience. He's an excellent attorney. He's extremely organized. And I got to pick anyone I wanted. He was the guy. Here's the takeaway for your audience. Former prosecutors who are certified criminal trial lawyers, you're definitely headed in the right direction. But on that former prosecutor piece, you want to ask this very important question in my mind. Have you ever tried a homicide case or a rape case as a prosecutor? very important question to ask. Have you ever tried before a jury to conclusion, not that you had one, did you try it to conclusion, a rape or a murder? And the reason that is, Julio, is the A team goes in on the homicides and on the rape cases in a prosecutor's office. So that says to me that the prosecutor, like somebody in my position, had the confidence in that particular person to give them the more serious cases. So that's how I go about advising people. As far as business clients are concerned, you know, same kind of thing holds true too. I like a good trial lawyer, because if the lawyers on the other side know, or on a civil case, the other side know that you can try a case and that you're not afraid to try a case, because believe it or not, most lawyers are not trial attorneys, then you've got a force multiplier there, because the risk increases for the other side based upon those competencies.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's the same thing if you're going in on the business end of it. You're going in to pitch your idea to a board member or to somebody who you're looking to get referrals from. You want to make sure that the person walking in understands the mentality that they're walking into. So as an attorney, I'm sure that it's an invaluable bit of experience you guys bring to the table.
I'll just add one. I just want to add one last thing. I cannot tell you how many times, as a prosecutor or even as a lawyer that's handled many other cases, and now as a criminal defense attorney, the question being asked, you know, when you're evaluating a case and which way is it going to go, and are they going to see the issues, or are they capable of trying a case, is who is the lawyer? It's a question that's asked all the time on the other side, and that can have a significant impact on how you approach the case based upon the competencies of your adversary.
Makes perfect sense. Dave, would you like to add a little bit to your opinion on what it takes to be, you know, to look for a good attorney?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Bob said, we are former prosecutors who aggressively fight the government when our clients are charged with crimes. And we also handle domestic violence restraining orders, both on the plaintiff side, victims of domestic violence, and that's important in this conversation. Everybody needs representation if they're in a position of danger in the household, or defendants who are removed from their houses and they don't see their kids during the pendency of the restraining order case. So we handle those cases. And when we left the prosecutor's office in 2013, we had to do some soul searching as to how we're going to generate business. I mean, when you're in the prosecutor's office, you get a check every 2 weeks. You don't have to worry about bringing in new cases, and you don't have to worry about networking and generation like you do in the private sector. So when we left the prosecutor's office in 2013, we really focused on referral sources, people that will be referring us cases. And we quickly found out that family law attorneys were our #1 referral source. Why? Because most family law attorneys are not trial lawyers. These family law attorneys handle divorce actions, and most resolve with settlement agreements, or they go to a judge for a bench trial. They're not in front of juries like you are in the criminal practice. So those are law firms that are set up not to handle the criminal cases like we do. We're the former prosecutors in front of juries. So very early in the BIANCHI Law Group's history, we reached out to the family law attorneys, and luckily we have relationships with them throughout the state of New Jersey that send us criminal cases. We also work very closely with other law firms that do not have criminal law attorneys. And when they don't, well, they could even generate revenue without having a criminal law practice. We call it revenue without a billable hour. In today's time, and lawyers have down years so far. 2020, we're talking right now, it's June 16th of 2020. The courthouses are closed throughout the state of New Jersey. And we're coming out of a quarantine order where people didn't leave their homes. So generally speaking, law firms' revenues have been down over 2020. So what we're reaching out to law firms is with this program called Revenue Without a Billable Hour. Why? Because we're certified criminal trial attorneys, and we could actually handle criminal cases that the family law attorneys or the other law firms without criminal practices can handle. And when they send those cases to us, or like-minded people that are certified criminal trial attorneys, we're able to send back referral fees, which is an exception to the general rule of fee sharing. Generally speaking, attorneys cannot share fees, cannot send referral fees, and just can't happen unless you're certified in a couple areas, one being criminal. So we're very fortunate in the BIANCHI Law Group that we saw this very early on in the history of our practice to link up with lawyers throughout the state of New Jersey who don't handle criminal cases. And they could refer cases to us. And now, because of the certification, and we're both certified, we're two of 497 in the state of New Jersey, we are able to send back referral fees. And we actually provide the law firms and the secretaries and the receptionists and the managing partners with materials to help them educate their personnel to readily identify cases that come to the BIANCHI Law Group. We'll give them a script to send these cases. And we're here for not only family law attorneys, but any law office that does not handle criminal.
I just want to just jump in here real quick. It's 2 out of, not 497, Dave. It's, I'm sorry, I think the number was wrong.
I think it's 500. It's 497 is the certified criminal trial attorneys.
Oh, okay. My mistake then. I thought it was 200 and less than 250. Either way, it's a very small amount. But I also want to say that with regard to the family law attorneys, some do handle domestic violence cases, and that's just fine. Dave and myself do those, but we concentrate on criminal. And what a lot of people don't understand, and the reason we got into this kind of niche with the family law attorneys, is that in a domestic violence context, many times the underlying offense, or the predicate offense as they call it, is a crime. It could be murder or aggravated assault or rape or kidnapping, things of that nature. And those are areas where the family law attorneys or other lawyers that don't handle criminal are extremely uncomfortable with. So they may handle part of a case, maybe for their business client or for their matrimonial case, but then refer to us the criminal and or domestic violence. So it's been a good relationship. And we saw that when we were in the prosecutor's office. There's a family law unit there that handles cases that crimes that come specifically out of the domestic violence context. So, you know, it was kind of a symbiotic, very easy flow for us.
Yeah, good point, Bob. I mean, those domestic violence cases, unfortunately, do not play a part in the referrals that we're able to give. Those restraining order cases are in the family part before a judge. They're bench trials. They're not jury trials. So unfortunately, that is the case. But we have found that, yes, family law attorneys do like to handle restraining orders, but many of them who don't have the background and the experience to try cases look for experienced trial attorneys to help them or to try them in their place in the family section for the restraining order work.
That's a fantastic strategy. I mean, that's actually one of the key takeaways that I always go over with my own clients, is that you have to be able to build your in-group, your influencers network. And for you guys, that's the family attorneys and other like-minded legal practices. And again, fantastic. This way you're symbiotic without being competitive. So, which brings me now, you know, to a point that you made earlier, Dave. Just because we were under quarantine doesn't mean crime stopped. So I'm sure that there's still a lot of people sitting in the different county jails and everything that are in need of your services. And, you know, many of them are probably, you know, business owners or other people who have found themselves in some sort of problem with the law. One of the situations I've heard a lot about in the news recently has been the gym owners down in South Jersey that were willing to get arrested for this. So tell me, how does BIANCHI Law Group, how does Bob and Dave handle issues now during the coronavirus, and what would you recommend for businesses that are trying to open back up?
Well, let me just jump in before Dave goes on that point, Julio. One of the things that we try to do with businesses, and you know we have a business consulting group as well, that actually, and this is way before COVID, is made up of former chief law enforcement executives as well as healthcare, in order to help businesses with workplace violence in particular, which we've seen a massive explosion of throughout the last couple of years, as well as to be in compliance with OSHA and, you know, the various regulations of their industry. And we've done, our group has done things like with respect to hospitals and healthcare facilities, to petroleum companies, retail outlets, and it's shocking. And, you know, it's really important. This is both the dovetailing of legal and business. Our two consulting group and our law group kind of work simpatico with one another, because we want to make sure, and they should want to make sure, they have a plan that they know where their deficits are, they know how to correct those deficits, and an action plan to make sure that they're ensuring compliance. So should, God forbid, an incident happen, you can make sure that it's mitigated, the damage is mitigated as much as possible. But should there be a lawsuit down the road, they have the ability to say that we actually went the extra step, the extra mile, and hired a fine consulting group that gave us these recommendations, and we followed them, and we were in compliance with all those things. And so that's both legal and the consulting group coming together. With respect to COVID-19 in particular, as you know, we have an ebook out there about how to reopen your business during the COVID-19 scenario. We gave a lot of data and information out there for those who weren't able to afford our services, but for those larger companies that are able to be able to go and actually do a risk assessment and a specific plan, which I think is crucial. But that doesn't just end there, and I'll let Dave take it from here. There are going to be a plethora of crimes that are going to be committed either out of desperation, mental illness and addiction issues that have not been addressed, and in fact have been exacerbated by isolation and the failure to be able to get medication and access to mental health and addiction counselors during this lockdown. Theft, fraud, be on the lookout, folks. Be very careful. There's going to be a lot of computer fraud that's going to go on with respect to this. And then you're going to have your garden variety kind of crimes, which we're seeing all over the place. Just pick up the newspaper. Domestic violence, unfortunately, and you can only imagine with the drinking and the finances, problems with that are going to take a bad situation and make it worse, and we're seeing that for sure, as well as stores being burglarized, people being robbed and shot over something as stupid as whether you should wear a mask or not. So I think the proliferation, if you will, of crime is going to be pretty significant, and how that's going to be handled, Dave can talk about. What do you do, when you're charged with a crime? But for your business clients that are out there, look, I mean, it's self-interest to say it, but we have an executive legal protection program. And that executive legal protection program is there 24/7 for chief executive officers of businesses as well as their families. So that if you have a problem, call immediately, because Julio, you know, and I know Dave knows, and I know that every practicing prosecutor and defense lawyer knows that in those first critical hours while they're trying to find somebody to call is when statements are being made, evidence is being gathered, confessions occur, things are lost that should have been kept that may have been a defense for a person. So it is imperative not to be seeking to our business clients a criminal defense attorney at the time of the crisis, but rather to be able to go right operational with that attorney. And also, before an incident happens, have those lawyers come in and talk to your staff about domestic violence, about workplace violence, about things that you can do not to get into trouble. But should you get into trouble, here's what you need to do. We do all of that in our executive protection plan.
That's fantastic. And this is one of the things that when we are building a strategy for a new business opening up, we always recommend that they have their list of professionals, because, you're absolutely right. And I agree 100%. I always try to tell my own clients that should they or one of their family members ever do find themselves in a legal problem, they should be lawyered up within hours, not days.
Seconds. And I'll tell you what, I played on the other side. Dave did too. Dave's been with me while we're watching an interview occurring in the room of a high profile business person, athlete, professional, very publicly visible profile. The minute a lawyer calls and says, stop the interview's got to stop. But that never occurred. And then we were shocked in many occasions as prosecutors when the lawyer eventually came into the courtroom, who had very little criminal law experience or knowledge about how the New Jersey system worked. A lot of them came from New York on the high profile side, which became disastrous, as it were. Good for us as prosecutors, but not good for the client. So when you say hours, within hours, understand, guys like what me and Dave used to do are already almost through our interviews by that time.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are the best, definitely. So, that's great bit of information. And, everyone who's watching this, all the links to how to get a hold of these guys is going to be in the show description below. Please do not miss up your opportunity. If you're a larger company or just are concerned, reach out to them. They can help you walk through the process. Now, Dave, while we're on the topic of arrest and getting lawyered up and everything in a timely manner, what changes have happened throughout all of this time? What can a person getting arrested now in the state of New Jersey expect as things moving on? You know, I've heard mention of virtual courts. I've heard of a lot of different things. Tell us, what can our viewers expect?
Sure. About a couple of years ago, New Jersey was one of the states that passed criminal justice reform. And I really think the conversation starts there, because in the past, New Jersey and other states, federal included, had monetary bail, meaning you get arrested, a judge would set bail. It could be $10,000, $25,000, 10%, or bond, varying different arrangements for bail, where essentially you would come up with financial assets or resources and then be released. But a couple of years ago, we shifted away from monetary bail to a risk assessment, and it resulted in defendants, business clients, people in the business industries being arrested and going to jail. Why? Because it no longer was based on how much money you had, and it was more based on who the person is and what sort of risk that individual posed to society. So that is why it is so important to get to criminal defense attorneys very early on, because there is a very small window from arrest to a first appearance, which happens typically within 48 hours, where a prosecutor will have to make a decision whether or not to file a formal motion to detain a person. Not to detain them for a short period of time, but to detain them for the pendency of the prosecution, which could be a long period of time. All right, so that process is happening very early, and it's that much more important because it's not going to be based on financial resources. It's going to be based on the person, the risk, and a prosecutor's decision. Now, for what's happening with COVID-19, essentially beginning March, we were shut down. We couldn't go to court, but it didn't stop. I mean, luckily for all of the attorneys out there and litigants, both criminal defendants and also civil and matrimonial and all the other litigants out there, the process is continued. And they did so virtually. We're on Zoom right now, and the courts have been using Zoom and Microsoft Teams and other networks and programs to continue on with video conferences. And we have. And there have been all sorts of problems that go along with that, including how in the world do you cross-examine or even do a testimonial hearing on Zoom? And it's created problems for attorneys in that manner. But it looks like the end is near, hopefully. There's been a recent order coming out from the judiciary that it looks like we're going into phase 2, where courthouses will be opening shortly. But there are all kinds of logistical problems right now, presently, with the courts being down, because the bail process, that detention process that I talked about in the beginning of this segment, is a complex case. It's a complex process. And it's even more complex when you can't go to the jail and see your client face-to-face, or you can't meet with family members face-to-face. But we've adapted. At the BIANCHI Law Group, we do video conference consultations. We are readily available for our clients for their needs. And we're continuing to move on and do the best we can with the situation that we have.
Julio, do I have a second to address that?
Yeah, please.
You know, what your audience may want to know is that, and a lot of people ask us, we get calls, you know, every week, and we do a lot of national TV legal appearances, and we're kind of asked, like, how does the system flow? They don't know, and they're scared, and we understand that. And one of our jobs is to try to limit the fear to a place of realism, as opposed to your mind, which can really blow things up way beyond what they need to be. And part of that, to me, is giving them knowledge, information. Okay, knowledge is power. And what's happening is, as Dave is explaining, is this bail system. And then after that, you go into a pre-grand jury system, if you will, where there's like offers negotiated, there's some discovery that goes back and forth, information about the case, police reports, so that you can assess the case. And typically prosecutors posit or say, we'll give you our best offer now before it goes to the grand jury. Okay, that's a conversation for a whole nother time as to what to do in that circumstance. Then the case, if it doesn't resolve, proceeds to the grand jury. And that's actually a formal charging. It's required by our Constitution. So the complaint you get initially from the police starts a process, but to start the court process in earnest is where the grand jury comes back and indicts you for crimes. And then after that, there's a significant period of time that may go go on where you're allowed to file motions. Like say, for example, we argue that your right, Fifth Amendment right to remain silent was violated by the police, or your Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure was violated. Recently, we had one where we were arguing that the text messages should not be admitted as evidence because they don't meet the authentication rule of the evidence rules, blah, blah, blah. There's all sorts of legal motions that can be filed. Eventually, if the case can't resolve, or if the person is innocent and says, I didn't do it, the court then starts moving you towards the trial process. So here's where I don't know if I'm differing with Dave, but I'll give a different little spin in my mind about the conversation about using Zoom and virtual courtrooms to do things. I agree with Dave completely. If there's, it is impossible to do it virtually. And I don't think it's fair to do it virtually because the finder of fact, whether it be a judge or a jury, needs to be able to see the demeanor of a witness in a courtroom and how they're responding. They say communication and body language is 80% of communication. I think I'm close to that statistic. I agree with that. It's not about words, it's about how they respond. But that said, I hope that this experience has shown the courts that we don't have to go to court for every single step in the process. Do we have to do it for testimonial motions? Yes. Do we have to do it for trials? Yes. But when we're doing, just before, when COVID was out there and before the courts closed down, there was that gap. Dave was actually trying a jury trial on a sex assault case when the order came down to shut the courts for everything except trials that were in progress. So Dave had to go like another week, and those jurors and the clients and the lawyers and the judge and the court staff had to go another week knowing the whole courthouse is shut down because of this insidious disease, but you have to remain. So I'm sure that a lot of people were very uncomfortable with that. My point is we have to worry about a resurgence. We have to be smart. I hope the courts combine. Okay, my last case was while Dave was on trial, I had to go to the municipal court, packed with people. I literally was hovering in the corner of the place because people, we're worried about this disease. I know they're going to say wear masks, but it's impossible to wear masks and socially distance, in my mind, properly. Let's not have a resurgence. And the way, in my mind, to avoid the resurgence is for things like an arraignment, which is where I was at. An arraignment is part of the process after you've been charged or you've been indicted. That is a process, Julio, where you go in, and you basically, the judge reads the charges, and he asks if discovery has been exchanged, and they ask one question of the defense attorneys and the clients. How do you plead, guilty or not guilty? Everybody at that stage pleads not guilty. Okay, come back the next time. And so there's a lot of appearances that can be done that aren't constitutional in nature, aren't that serious or significant. You could lower the cost of court staff. You can be socially distant. You can be responsible. Preserve those courtrooms for the things that need to happen, like testimonial motions and trials. I hope they go in that direction. Something tells me they're not, but we'll see.
Yeah, good point. Good point, Bob. Because in the past, we would go for criminal cases. Let's say we go to Morris County, right? And the judge would come out, who knows, it wouldn't be exactly on time. People would be in the hallways. And then the assistant prosecutors may not be ready. The cases may not be ready. And it's a tremendous waste of time and resources for not only the court staff, but the attorneys and the litigants who are paying the attorneys at an hourly rate possibly. So I concur, Bob. I think you bring up some very good points. I think this period of time has been a lesson to all of us, including ourselves at the BIANCHI Law Group, because we never used video conferencing before. Rarely, if ever, did we do a video conference with a client. And I prefer the video conferences better than phone calls now. I mean, you get to see and you get to look into the eyes of your clients and have better connections. And I think it's a benefit and a plus, where we learn how to use this technology not only in our practices, but potentially in the courtrooms.
Yeah, good points you guys made. It seems like the world is changing, and we just have to hope that the courts decide to catch up and do some sort of a hybrid system. So now, we're running close to the end of the show here. Each of you, what's one key takeaway from each of you that you would give to your clients or to anybody watching this show right now?
Well, I think my key takeaway is whether you're dealing with a problem such as a criminal matter, which is obviously very serious and your liberty's at stake, or for those who are involved in other areas of the law, or those that aren't even involved legally, like with our consulting group, is to take a breath, and to, not look at the universe of problems of things that could happen and worry about every single one of those, but to go step by step and control those things you can control, which is either your own peace of mind or consulting those professionals that you feel comfortable with, and then letting it go. What we try very hard to do with every client we touch, whether it be in our law group or in our consulting group, but especially the law group, because many of them are broken, mentally ill, addicted, they're facing jail time, is to try to, if you will, talk them off the ledge, because a lot of what they're thinking is stuff that's never going to occur. So I think that is really, to me, the most important thing. And look, we all suffer from it. We've gone through a treacherous 8 to 12 weeks of being in lockdown and isolated. Dave and myself and you, Julio, are no different than anyone else. It takes its toll on you. So developing those resiliency skills, I think is the most important thing anyone could do. And to prove my point that I'm not just saying the words, Dave and myself, when we first went out into private practice, actually got trained by Dr. Brene Brown down in San Antonio, the famous psychologist who has a program called the Daring Way program. And it's all about how to deal with shame and how to be resilient and how to overcome obstacles, give yourself the permission to be human. It was a week-long course that kind of looked at like us, like we were crazy two lawyers from New Jersey there, when they were all like psychiatrists and psychologists and mental health professionals. But I asked them this question, and Dave did as well, and they got why we were there. I said, before they're seeing you, they're seeing us. And we need a way to be able to talk to them as human beings and people first, not as antiseptic lawyers with suits and ties on, spitting out statutes, regulations, and jail time. That all has to be done. Getting an excellent legal result has to be the goal of the attorney. But we can also treat our clients humanly. So it's a long-winded answer to say, take a breath, do what you can, and try to build those resiliency skills. 2 great books, The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown and Rising Strong, are great materials to read when you're feeling a little down.
Fantastic. Dave?
Great points. Yeah, great points. And I did misspeak before. It is 250, not 500.
Yes, I knew it.
Giving it to Bianchi there. If you have a legal issue, get it into the hands of somebody that is experienced in that area of practice. And it's not just criminal. It's especially important in criminal when somebody is charged with a crime and their freedom, their liberty is at stake. There's no bigger downside or collateral consequence than that. But in any type of case, make sure you get it into the hands of somebody that is knowledgeable of the subject matter. And here at the Bianchi Law Group, we admittedly are not experts in everything. We are very narrow in our areas of practice. And when the phone rings and we're asked for an employment lawyer or a personal injury lawyer or something that we don't handle, we have strategic partners out there. I mean, literally, we have relationships that we form proactively before the call even comes in. So we know who's going to get the employment case, who's going to get the personal injury case. And that's important as well. At the Bianchi Law Group, we are here. We are open to forming new strategic alliances with people out there who don't handle criminal. We're here under our revenue without a billable hour program. We'll be happy to educate your staff on getting us those cases. But more importantly, we'd like to know what you do, because there are cases that we don't handle that we'd like to get in your hands. So we appreciate everybody for today's program. Thank you, Julio, for putting this on. This has been tremendous, and we look forward to helping some of your viewers if they have problems that we can help them with.
Yeah, and I just like to add, Julio, to what Dave said. That's so true. To be a full-service law firm, you have to have those strategic relationships. But we are very, very careful when we're vetting that the principles that we expressed previously as to how to find a good lawyer are also consistent with the people that we refer people to as well. In other words, I look at it like, would I refer my father or my mom, when she was alive, or my sister or my family members to this person with great confidence that they're going to be able to handle the matter in a way that I think they should as a lawyer, which is not just skillful professionally, capable of excellent legal results, but the care and compassion to take care of them, not just as a case, but as a human.
Good point, Bob. I mean, we stand there, we'll put our credentials next to anybody's in the criminal world. I mean, a former prosecutor, certified criminal trial attorneys, we're in the national media. Between Bob and I think we're over 1,000 appearances on national television, talking about very important cases to the nation. And we are here. And again, we appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, Julio.
All right. Thank you both for being on. And thank you for watching today's episode of the morning meeting. Just remember, if you saw some value in the information presented, don't forget to smash that like button and give us a thumbs up. Also, leave a comment down below. I make sure to read all of your questions, comments, and concerns. And if should you have anything for Dave or Bob from the BIANCHI Law Group, whether it's related to, not for legal advice, but to related to a general question, or if you're asking something from their business consulting group, leave the comments below. I'll make sure they get them, and somebody will get back to you. Excuse me. So if you guys need expert advice, just remember, like Dave and Bob said repeatedly through this, you're not going to go to a dentist when you need your car fixed. So you don't want to go to just any random attorneys when you're trying to get your criminal case fixed, or when you need the specific functions in your business taken care of that will help you successfully move forward legally and professionally. All their contact information will be in the show description below. Remember, this is the morning meeting, helping you get your livelihood in order so you can live the life you want. Thank you.